here are 3 lessons that I learned growing our business to $3.4 billion in 5 years. Lesson number 1, singularity of focus. Number 2, cadence of accountability. If you know that every Tuesday, every Thursday, every Saturday, you're going to actually talk about some certain number, certain metric, certain KPI that are going to get me there, that cadence keeps me in line to getting there. And the third is, just so you don't hack it, good process drives good results. Well, when you have good process that drives good results, it actually is a lot more sustainable.
I would agree with all of those. Definitely focus is critical. For the first 12 years of me owning business, I owned a few different businesses. I had several different things going. I was always kind of looking at what the next opportunity was that was interesting, and I was hopping around. And although I did all right, none of those things turned out to be nearly as successful or profitable or grow the way I always was hoping that I could. Once I said, okay, I'm going to do one thing and one thing only. I'm going to focus only on this one business. I'm not going to get distracted by other opportunities. I'm not going to try and run 3 or 4 things at once. That is the point where I was able to then grow the business to where we now have just under 100 employees and high 7 figures in sales. That only happened because I focused on one thing and one thing only. So I 100% agree with that advice. Cadence of accountability, but even more importantly, having metrics in the first place, things that you measure regularly and track and work on growing. Things like sales and profitability, and maybe some of the metrics that are important to your business, whether it's payroll as a percent of income, cost of goods sold as a percent of income, whatever those things are. Having things that you regularly measure and check and hold yourself accountable to working on improving, that will happen. If you're seat of my pants, I'm not a numbers person, I just go by feel, you're going to feel a lot less results than if you can measure and track and grow based on real data that you regularly are looking at. The third thing, processes, absolutely. You have to be able to be doing the same thing over and over and then continuously looking at and improving those processes. If every time you do something, it's a fresh start, it's a new day, you don't have a process, you don't have a procedure, you're not consistent in how you're doing it, you have 5 different people doing the same thing, but each one does it their own way differently, you're going to never get consistent results. You're not going to be able to troubleshoot. You're not going to be able to improve your process over time. So you definitely have to have processes and procedures in place, do things consistently, and then consistently work on improving each of those things that you do over time. That is how you continue to get better and can scale reliably rather than getting lucky once in a while and the rest of the time wondering what it was that happened those times you got lucky and not being able to replicate it.
That you need on your team if you want to scale your business. Number 1, you need an operator. Listen, entrepreneurs are great. We are visionaries. We have big ideas. The problem with having big ideas and big vision is we aren't really good about executing and implementing. So you need somebody on your team that is really good at tasks. Number 2 is a utility player who can do a lot of the day-to-day tasks. Listen, if you did an audit of your time, you'd find you're probably doing a lot of work that you could pay somebody $25 an hour to do. So hire that person so that you could focus on the big thing.
Okay, so his suggestion is you need an operator and a utility person. An operator to run the day-to-day of the business and a utility player to do the admin tasks that you don't have time for or that aren't the best use of your time. I think it's much easier to start with finding that admin person, and it doesn't even have to be somebody in the US that you pay $25 an hour. It could be a virtual assistant that you pay $5 an hour who's overseas, who helps out with a lot of stuff. That is a good place to start. Finding an operator who can run the business successfully, who'd make the decisions that are in the best interest of the business as if they were the owner, that is a much harder person to find and train and get up to speed. So what I see a lot of people doing is trying to hand off those tasks prematurely, without enough training, without enough support, and then the business starts to flail, it starts to stop growing and starts sinking, and then all kinds of problems ensue, and then people get laid off who are not that operating person, but other people who feel like they're somehow less essential, but really it's that operator that is the problem. So absolutely audit your time, hand off as many non-essential admin tasks as you can to somebody who's gotten the training and support to be able to do them in your place. Replacing yourself as the operator of the business is much more challenging, needs more time and energy invested in it, and needs careful monitoring even after you've handed it off so that you don't hand off the business you worked so hard to get to the point where you could try to hand it off to then have the whole thing crater on you. And that happens more often than you would think. So be very careful with that step.
There are
3 levels to scale a business to exit. Level 1 entrepreneur grows a company by oneself, hits 10K or 20K a month. Level 2 entrepreneur reinvests profits into hiring talent, hits 50K to 100K a month. Level 3 entrepreneur finds A+ talent, hits 500K a month. Simple, not easy, but if you want to scale to exit, this is the way.
Okay, billionaire bros. All right, I'm already skeptical just because of the name of this channel. But yes, the way to grow a business to $1 million a month is start at $1 a month and get bigger. And yes, very few businesses doing $1 million a month are one-man operations anymore. So yes, you hire people to help you get to that size. I don't really understand the point of that video. It's like saying 1 + 1 is 2. Was anybody unclear that that was how the world worked, or that 1 + 1 would be 2? I don't know. Seems like a waste of video.
Stages of scaling a business. One, you have to shift your perspective that the first stage of scaling a business is an investment phase. Too many people try to scale a business and still make money. Then what you have to do is chart out an execution phase where you get to multiples of execution. For me, I like to get to a 3-time multiple for everything that I do. So I get people to break even, then I try to have every asset, including the resources of employees, to get to a 3-time multiple. And then I give an equity phase, which can include bonuses, options, warrants, or even equity in my business.
I think maybe he's talking about some specific types of businesses. It's definitely not the case that every business has to go through a long phase of time where you're putting more into it than it's giving back to you. It really depends entirely on the kind of business. If you start a window washing business, your upfront investment is $100, a couple of Home Depot buckets, some squeegees, some sponges, a long pole to reach the second story windows, maybe a ladder. You're not into it for very much. After 2 or 3 jobs, you should be seeing a profit. If you're not, you're doing something wrong with that business. It shouldn't take you 2 years to make money in a window washing business. Now, yeah, on the other hand, if you're starting a manufacturing business and you have to start it from scratch and buy the building and buy tons of equipment and hire a bunch of employees before you can start producing the product, yes, it could definitely take you years to make even it back to break even. So again, this is sort of that general advice. Here's 3 things to do for any business, but it's really not any business. It's very specific to the kinds of businesses that require a large upfront investment and a long runway to break even. He kind of lost me on the last part too, or I guess the middle part, where he tries to get 3x value out of every asset. I don't know what that means. And I mean, I do accounting and finance for a living, so I'm a little confused on exactly how he's measuring that, or why 3x is enough in some cases, or how you even get to 3x in other cases. So that is not explained well, and it's not clear what he means, to me at least, and I would suspect to most people listening, because there's just not enough information to understand how he's even considering that. And then he gets to an equity phase, which again, I don't really understand what he's talking about. Equity cashing out the business, or where it's returning an investment. I don't know. This advice is lumpy and missing a lot of pieces and specific to only certain kinds of businesses. So if it happens to fit your criteria and you know exactly what he's talking about, great. But I think this is not super helpful for most people listening.
3 tips in scaling your small business. Number 1, perfect your trade and outsource the system. Number 2, focus 80% of your time on marketing. Number 3, don't be afraid of financial investment. You must be willing to spend money to make money.
3 tips for growing your business. 1, outsource. Yes, it doesn't make sense to try to do everything yourself. If you do, you're definitely going to be limiting your growth because there's only so much time that you have. Hiring people to help, whether they're internal or external, makes a lot of sense. Just make sure you're hiring the right people and they're really giving you more of your time back and they're not sucking up time or costing a lot more than they should. 2, marketing. Absolutely. Still, 99% of businesses rely on word of mouth marketing. They don't really have a marketing plan. They don't really know who their customers are. They're not proactively bringing in new customers on a regular basis. So if you want to grow, you've got to be doing that. You've got to be thinking about marketing. 80% of your time marketing may be a bit of a stretch, but definitely more than the 5% or less that I'd say most small business owners in thinking about marketing. You have to have a marketing plan. You have to put it in place. You have to test it and make sure it works and then tweak it as you go. That's what's going to enable you to grow everything else. 3rd, don't be afraid of investment. That sounds like something somebody would say if they're selling you a course or wanting to sell you a course. You have to spend money to make money, which is code for buy my course and I'll help you make money. Not necessarily. There's a lot of things you can do that don't cost anything. In my weekly newsletter, I'm often talking about stuff that are no cost changes you can make to your business that will help it grow. While there are some things that do cost money and there's no avoiding it, I wouldn't say as a blanket rule, look to spend a lot of money to make money. Spend intelligently, invest so that you're getting a good return on that investment. Don't just throw it out there and assume that if you spend it, you're going to get it back, because that's not how it works.